This hour of the Alan Autry Show is sponsored by Sinlong, the most realistic artificial grass in the Central Valley.
From NFL quarterback to Hollywood to the mayor's office, and now behind the mic at KXEX, this is the Alan Autry Show. No retreat.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
What the hell's going on out here? Everybody grabbing out there. Nobody. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
So, 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable. Free at last! Free at last! Thank Almighty!
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX.
And welcome to Alan Autry No Retreat. Terrific Tuesday, Taco Tuesday, whatever you want to call it. When you're my age and you wake up, no matter what day it is, it's happy time. It's time to celebrate. It should be a national holiday. I woke up. I was able to walk. My eyes were able to see where I was going. My body was able to get me there, although with a little bit more pain than last year. But not as much as going to be next year. That's called the normal aging process. I'm trying to embrace it. It's tough. It's tough. I'm glad to be alive. I'm so happy to be here with you. You make it. I'm not just blowing smoke. I'm too old to blow smoke up any part of your body. I just, my tolerance for BS and blowing smoke and all of that, when you're this much closer to meeting your maker than the day you were born, as I am, it tends to kind of squeeze that kind of stuff out of you. So I say, I'm so thankful and excited to be here with you all, the listeners, the viewers. I really, really mean it. And it's important to me that although some of you don't like me, a lot of you tune me off because of maybe a political stance I take or a comment that I make, I don't take it personal. I mean, that happens in families, but I've always tried to, walk my talk. And that particular talk is to shoot you straight about how I feel, how my deeply held convictions, things that I still are trying to figure out, like we all are, that I would share them with you, unvarnished, truthfully, and then just take the consequences. Folks want to stick around and visit with me and that sort of thing. I'm really thankful for that, but I don't take it personal. I mean, I have some strong political beliefs. I think faith, family, country is loyalty to those three in that order are important. I think it's a great way to build a country, to sustain a country. And those are unshakable principles. But I also keep an open mind. And I've tried to do that my whole life. I want to keep an open mind, but I'm not going to let my brain fall out doing it. So when you try to tell me that, inflation is not a problem, it's transitory when we know it's not. When we tell me that the border is secure and we know it's not, and we tragically know it's not when people lose their life because of these policies, when you have 2 wars raging and young people and women and children are dying every day and you can't really articulate what is victory, when you're going to get out, what you're going to do, what the plan is. I'm sorry, but I went through that once in my life. I saw that movie, and it was called Vietnam, and tragically it wasn't a movie. It was a reality, and I lost 2 friends over there. I was a 301 on the lottery, or if I would have been drafted. They drafted folks back in those days. So you can't help how you were raised. You can't help those values that were, and you can improve. And, I'll be the first one to say, as much as I love my mom and dad, and as much as maybe you love your mom and dad, and how much you respect them, how much you believe them, they weren't always right in everything they passed on to us. The generation before the greatest generation, World War II generation, a lot of folks, especially in the Deep South, but all over the country, there was a lot of racism. It was passed on to their kids, and that, thank God, many of them rejected that. And as time has gone on, we've seen in this country, although racism is not completely eradicated, and not just white towards black, I mean black towards white, Hispanic towards whites, white towards Hispanic, Hispanic towards Asia, whatever. There's those racial discriminations, and even within their own race against each other. It's just out there. But we're dedicated in this country to principles that all people are created equal in the eyes of God. We got to hang on to that unshakable principle. Because I advise when they come here locally to me, or I've had people kind of around the country call me up for, as crazy it may sound, some political advice. And, because we were pretty successful here at the city of Fresno for 8 years, primarily because I could pick a good team. Not because of my brilliance. It's just out of all my faults, which are too many to mention, one of the strong things I had going for me, I could pick good teammates. I always tried to pick people better than me, so I didn't have to look very far to fit that criteria. But I always ask them one question, why do you want to run? And if they stammer or they hesitate, I know right then they shouldn't run. Because especially in today's day and time, it's just too tough. The system will chew you up, spit you out, destroy you, your family, your reputation, you lose your job. It's just really not worth it unless you have a calling. And I tell them, look, if you decide to run, here's the best advice I can give you if you want to make a difference. If you just want to be something. See, a lot of people wanted to run for mayor and be mayor. They didn't want to serve as mayor because that's a grind day in, day out, as is a state representative, the president of the United States. Once the novelty wears off, that's why when somebody says, well, I've always wanted to be this and this and that, well, it's got to go deeper than that. You have to have a calling, because that calling will give you the courage to do this thing that I tell everyone that runs for office, to ask themselves this question and be honest with themselves. Will you be able to take that office if you win and have unshakable principles and flexible politics? Because all too often it's the reverse. And in today's political climate, it is absolutely reversed, where people run for office with unshakable politics and flexible principles. Why is that important? Because telling the truth should mean something. I put a tweet out the other day that said right is right and wrong is wrong, whether you're talking about your worst enemy, your best friend, or yourself. We're quickly, in this country, becoming a country that doesn't really care about lying if the person lying is somebody we're supporting politically. So that person has said, I want honesty. I value honesty. We ask them, this is true with Republicans, Democrats, and Libertarians, all of them. Well, if you do, why do you accept that obvious, bald-faced lie that's being told you? Just like you either don't hear it, don't care. And I've done a lot of thinking and praying on this. And I think we're dangerously close, if we're not there already, to a situation where if you're man or woman who's running, your candidate, if you're on the Democratic side, if they're the Democrat and Republican is Republican, you're going to be okay if you able to have the person you feel most comfortable being lied to and deceived by. The Pope came out and said it the other day. I know my Catholic brethren are going to get on me, but I'm sorry, the Pope. I respect the Pope, revere the Pope, but in my belief, my faith is the Pope is no closer to God than you or I. The God doesn't love the Pope any more than he loves the homeless person. Now, again, I respect the Pope. Don't get me wrong. But this Pope Francis, bless his heart, came out and said it, and I was kind of astonished. He says, well, I'm urging people to vote for Harris because we have to pick the lesser of two evils. The Pope said that. Man. No. If you're that conflicted about evil and evil, just pass on the election. Protect your right to vote, but you don't have to be made to vote. If you don't like either one of them and you think they're both evil, I'm not saying without sin. We're all have sin and fall short of the glory of God. But use the word evil. My goodness, you don't have to. Nobody's put a gun to your head and make you vote. They do that in Venezuela. Put a gun to your head. Hey, vote for Maduro or the consequences. Like that in China. It is what it is. But I just, even you have people you would never think would do so, have kind of given in to this cynical belief that, really being honest, and it doesn't really matter anymore, that you can find some other things. And I get it, they all lie. But some lies are not as consequential as others. I wish they all told the truth. But we all. Have you told a lie out there? Listen to me, folks, have you? Yeah. Anybody out there who's never told a lie? Yeah. Now, granted, when you become a public servant, you have a higher standard because your lies or your truths are affecting people's lives left and right. But you say it in your family, it's affecting your family. So truth and lies. So back in the day, telling the truth really meant something. Richard Nixon was drummed out of office because he lied about knowing about these 4 third-rate burglars that broke into the DNC to snoop around. Compare that to what's going on now. But the public and his own party, it was Republicans that went to him and said, you've got to go because you lied to the American people. Bald-faced lied to them. And so, I underscore, if you want to make a difference, if you really want to lead, if you really want to be the true public servant, you have to ask yourself, can I occupy that office? First of all, when I'm running for office, do I have enough guts to tell the truth? Or do I just am out there trying to appeal to a bunch of factions to keep a coalition together? And I'm not picking on Kamala Harris, but does anybody really believe that she's, for securing the border, that she's going to continue to support fracking and fossil fuels? No, not even the people that the far left know she's just playing that game to the middle. Trump does it somewhat as well. But I think the Democrats really have the bigger gap to close to where the most of the American people are in terms of the border, the economy, crime, and that sort of thing. But that's a big question that you have to ask yourself. Can I run and if I win, hold an office and have unshakable principles, be honest with the people, being one of those principles, being fair to everyone, that's another one of those principles, and have flexible politics, meaning you're going to have to work with the other side. You hear all these candidates, I want to bring the country together. I want to bring the country together. Well, do you really? Because it means you're going to have to compromise a little bit. Everybody talks compromise till it's time to compromise. Then they run like scalded dogs from a compromise. Why? Because the lunatic fringe of both parties start attacking, and they're very good at that. They'll attack you, make life miserable for you. And you've got to be able to say, that's the price for doing the right thing. Be that as it may. In this case, whoever wins this election has got to say, you know what? I may be a great president after 4 years, a lousy president. I may be impeached. I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm going to do my best to have unshakable principles and flexible politics. And making sure those principles aren't diluted with a bunch of politics. That could be confusing as well. A lot of people think a political stance is a principled, high, honored principle until further examination. And I've made that mistake. I've had to say, you know what? This principle had a little bit more politics in it than I originally thought. I need to rethink this. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to pick up on what we talked about yesterday in terms of the rhetoric that has gotten completely out of control. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. And the violence continues to escalate. And unless something happens to de-escalate on many fronts, including the candidates and how they choose to debate, we've been fortunate twice. Third time could be disastrous. And we'll be right back to talk about that.
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX.
I'm ready anytime. Oh, Laura, thank you. She jumped me for drinking a Celsius. My son got me onto that. I only drank 2 in my life. I drank 1 on the air, and man, Laura Fisher got onto me. He says, that stuff will kill you, this and that. So I back to coffee. I only drank 1 Celsius. Thank you for caring about me, Laura. I really mean that. And we don't always see eye to eye, but it's a classic example. I love her. I think she kind of likes me. I don't know. But she's through thick and thin, issues we agree on, don't disagree. She still watches. I appreciate her so much. And because there was no politics in that. She just cared about my health. Alan, put that Celsius down. That's going to kill you. That's my friend. We could disagree on many political things, but things that really matter of the human, and political policies mean something. You've heard me say it. I get that. But you know what I'm talking about. We got to agree to disagree and not be disagreeable. As Larry Powell would say.
Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX.
Okay, welcome back to the show. Before we get into this, because I want to show you some clips, because some of you contacted me and said, you know, they're not saying this stuff about Trump. I don't know where you've been. I don't mean to be mean about that. I'm not being sarcastic or flippant, but many, many people, from your average citizen to analysts on the left that have a huge following, saying this stuff about Trump, that he's Hitler or Mussolini, and that you're going to lose democracy if he gets elected. It's said not just once, all the time. It's become the theme. Well, you saw the DNC, the convention. That's the mantra. That's also the mantra that this Ryan Ruth quoted on social media. Now, I'm going to say some things, and you could say, well, that's just politically motivated. It's not. It's just fact. We didn't have as much information with the shooter in Butler, Pennsylvania, because he was shot dead. But we do know he did not like Trump. We do also know that he was influenced by several things. The perception that had been created around Trump and his so-called being a threat to democracy. But Ryan Ruth, contributor to the Harris-Biden campaign, that I'm not blaming them. I'm not blaming for what Ryan Ruth did. I'm just giving you an example here, because God forbid tomorrow we could have a right-wing wacko, and I double down on God forbid, take attempt on Kamala Harris or Tim Walz, and I don't want that at all. I do truly condemn all violence. But you got to look at this stuff if you're saying that words, statements coming from people of position can be influential, because that's the whole basis that they're trying to convict Trump on one of the indictments, that he incited violence and overthrow the government with his words when he said peacefully and patriotically, go make your voices heard. That's what Jack Smith is trying to get him on, inciting the riots, as well as, the documents that he took home and that sort of thing. So if you're buying that as a premise, then we have to examine it. We have to look at it, and we have to talk about it. And again, if the truth bothers you because the truth may not shine a good light on who you are supporting, if this come out about a Republican, because I'm an independent, or a conservative, or an independent, or whatever, I would say that's awful, regardless of what party. I just don't look at it that way. But because it's become so partisan and the vitriol so mean and dangerous, and if you buy the concept that can make an unstable mind do violent, crazy things, which that's what's being said about, well, I mean, you go all the way back and even before that, but Steve Scalise, the guy with the rifle, the Democrat, came out, a Bernie Sanders supporter, came out and says, give me the list of the Republicans that are playing in this softball game. And he went out and proceeded to unload his gun and paralyzed Steve Scalise and almost lost his life and that sort of thing. But you have this fellow, Ryan Ruth. We're finding more and more about him. And wow, what a resume this dude has. First of all, he has a Biden-Harris sticker on his truck, which was stolen, I guess. I don't know if he put it on there after he stole it or it was on there before. I don't know. But we do know he was a contributor to the Biden-Harris campaign. And we also know online he parroted the mantra, remember, democracy is on the ballot. That's not me saying that. That's this guy, Ryan Ruth. He also had a fascination with Ukraine. He went over to Ukraine, tried to recruit an army there. They rejected him because he was too old, but probably figured out after about 5 minutes with the guy that, he had one wheel in the sand, His elevator didn't go all the way to the top there. So they got him out of there. But the profile of dealing, he also had some dealings with Pakistan, apparently, getting false identification. It fits in with Merrick Garland's press conference in which he said overseas, these are the kind of plots that are happening to kill American officials and candidates. Mike Pompeo in particular. Didn't mention any Democrats, but I'm sure some Democrats are in the crosshairs as well. But what this Ryan Ruth did to get the documents and this and it lined up perfectly with Merrick Garland's warning of what they have found at the Department of Justice working with the FBI and the CIA. They're recruiting these people to come over and kill people in our country, notably political figures. Does that mean that Ryan Ruth was part of the bigger conspiracy? I don't know. But we need to find out because a lot of things don't add up about the lack of protection that the president had at the golf course. Those are legitimate questions. And whether you love me, hate me, somewhere in the middle, Democrat or Republican, that should concern you. You should want to know the truth. You should not be worried about, is this truth going to hurt my candidate from being elected? It just shouldn't. I know it's hard out there because a lot of you think like the Pope, lesser two evils, and many of you think that Trump is truly Hitler and a threat to democracy. But anyway, that's the latest on Ryan Ruth. Also latest on Taliban, but we're going to get on that. I won't be in tomorrow, but I try to come in Thursday. I'm getting a little surgery on my elbow. But the Taliban has taken over. Women now, by the way, can't laugh in public. They can't look at another man, even make eye contact with another man. That's the latest out there with the Taliban. Remember the Taliban said they were going to loosen up things, be nicer to women? Wrong. It's worse now than it's ever been. But we knew that. We knew. These people said, well, give the Taliban a chance. Biden was out there saying that, and you're shaking your head saying, Joe, come on. Scorpions don't suddenly not become scorpions and saying, I'm not going to sting. It's their nature. They can make that promise all along, but they're scorpions. But anyway, we'll talk about that on Thursday. Again, yesterday talked about crossing the line in political campaigns and debates. First of all, let me preface this. I probably should have did it yesterday. I am 100%, if you see me, by the way, on social media, if you see me, my eyes go up and to the right, I believe it is on the camera. Vice President Harris is taking questions in Philadelphia from the Association of Black Journalists there, and I'm just kind of can't help but see some of what you're saying. But let me preface what I'm about to say with this. I believe in debate. I wish there was 3, 4, 5, 6 debates, not people, just putting out these little ads trying to manipulate our minds, brainwash us into supporting them when 90% of the stuff on there isn't true. I want to see them go toe-to-toe, see how they respond to the questions, substantively answer the questions if they choose to. And if they don't choose to, that tells you something. I also believe at times in strong, heated debate. That's okay. People on Trump, Trump got triggered, this and that. Well, I wish Kamala would have got triggered on the issues that mean something to her. If it's climate change, my goodness, show me some passion. But all I'm saying up there is, because I know acting coaches, she's been working with an acting coach, throw that out, just be Kamala. If you notice, all of these folks now are mimicking Barack Obama. From the turn, that's this, to this with the finger. But and then you take a turn to the right. Well, I'm an actually, I study that. They're all mimicking Barack Obama. Well, that's Barack Obama who is mimicking Reverend Wright. Whether you agree with, America's chickens come home to roost, he made a lot of enemies. But Obama, the people he respected and liked to listen to, from Reagan to Reverend Wright, he uses that. He knows that you're communicating in other ways besides your words. Because you can say, I love you, but your body says, I hate you. You can say, I hate you, but your body says, I kind of love you, with your movements. But strong, hard debate, not only do I agree with that you need that times, the country was founded on it. Now, we weren't in the room when these folks were knocking out a constitution. They won the war. Then it was, okay, now what? It's 1781. They're there. They run the British out. Now, what's our country going to look like? What's our set of principles? They came up and they knocked out, created a constitution. The most innovative, most amazing document, if you value personal liberties and freedoms, that the history of the world had ever seen. And you just do a little reading history, man. Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson. I mean, they went at it. My goodness. Aaron Burr, Hamilton wound up in a duel. Burr shot him dead over political differences and stuff they said. It was crazy. And that got the attention of the folks there, and the rhetoric was cooled. And they went in there. They still debated hard. They debated and debated and debated, but they finally came out with this document called the Constitution for this country. So I believe in that debate. It's when you cross the line, which apparently Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton had their lines crossed. Because they said, let's go out, and I don't know who called out who. I think it was Burr called out Hamilton. I may be wrong. I don't know. All I know is they didn't make a play about it in New York. Called Burr. Made a play called Hamilton. So hopefully Hamilton was the guy that reluctantly goes, all right, I'll go outside. But there's certain things, like you can say somebody's a bad person. This person is angry. This person is disrespectful to people. This person, you can't depend upon him or her. This person holds a grudge. This person has no personality. This person is mean. And this person is a child molester. Well, look, you better darn sure have some proof before you call a person child molester, wife beater, racist. You just can't throw those things around like that, because those are things that really trigger people to take care of business. A guy goes to prison and they've been to court system, they're a child molester, they don't usually last very long in prison. Even another prisoner, murderers, take them out. Okay? So sometimes the jury gets it right, sometimes they don't. How you be falsely, there's just certain things you don't do because it hits home in a way that makes people do crazy things. And I would ask the audience, let's use Hitler, for example. if you just had this scenario, as crazy as it may be, just buy the scenario for a moment. You ran in to Adolf Hitler, and he was going to sail back here in a time machine. He was getting ready to go back to Germany, start doing his thing. And you got a little glimpse ahead. Somebody gave you a view of the future. And you saw 10, 15, 20 million innocent people dead, murdered by his policies, his beliefs. 6.2 million Jews murdered. Just carnage upon the planet that the history of the world has never seen. And you had a chance to take him out. Would you? Or would you stop somebody from doing that? It may be disturbing. I know what's going on in your head right now. You all have said, well, I just let him get on that boat and go and do his thing. Well, you're kind of unique. I know what I would do if I truly thought and believed in my heart that this was going to happen. So when you call somebody something so egregious, so horrible, that it activates a visceral response inside a person's soul, that they do horrible things, which could be done. They said that's what Trump did on January 6th. They blamed 4 cops that died when none of them died at the scene. One of them had a stroke, and it was tragic, that sort of thing. The only one died was Ashley Babbitt, who was shot by a Capitol police officer. So I don't want to get into that situation. But they pegged him as the reason that all of that violence happened and that people were dead because of him. Okay. Here's some of the things he was. First of all, just to back this up, we have some clips. Phil, here's some clips to kind of illustrate, because some people told me, which was astonishing to me, he said, no, they've never said anything like that, compared him to Hitler or, threat to democracy to that level, or Mussolini or whatever. No, that, Alan, you're just making that up. You're drinking the Fox News Kool-Aid. I heard that. Situation. Here we go.
And so if Donald Trump wants Kamala Harris and others to stop saying that he is a threat to democracy, then he should stop threatening democracy. Perhaps he shouldn't be trying to overturn elections, overthrow the government, and inciting insurrections if he doesn't want people to be honest about what he is, who he is, and what he's doing.
Cut 1. Let's go to cut 2.
Right now, I feel like MAGA in general, they are threats to us domestically, and we see it time and time again. Domestic terrorism is a real thing, and he is the guy that stokes it.
Let's not pretend that Donald Trump isn't exactly like Mussolini, exactly like Hitler. He is that guy.
Donald Trump cannot be president again. He's an existential threat to democracy.
He is destructive to our democracy, and he has to be eliminated.
This MAGA threat is a threat to the brick and mortar of our democratic institutions.
The former president is a threat to our most fundamental freedoms. He has openly said he will be a dictator on day one.
Go ahead and play that.
Who I got to vote for to keep Hitler out the White House.
Took to social media and highlighted language from Nazi Germany. This kind of rhetoric is unsurprising coming from the former president, and it is appalling.
Well, no, that's we'll save that last one. Well, folks, that ain't AI talking there. That's the real deal. Mussolini, Hitler, spends his time wanting you to think he spends his spare time playing golf when actually he's reading Mein Kampf because he wants to be Hitler 2.0. These kind of things, you wonder if you have an unstable mind and you hear this, especially if you respect Kamala Harris. A lot of people respect her. I respect her. I respect Joe Biden. I don't agree with many, many, many of their policies and ideologies. But did you just hear that? That goes on all the time. You don't hear, with all the mean tweets, all the crazy stuff that comes out of his mouth, and the eating of pets. I wish they'd eat pets. I wish he didn't tell you about I hate Taylor Swift, all this stuff, this and that. But he says Kamala Harris is a socialist, but he never called her Mao, who killed 40 to 75 million people, depending on the historian you're talking to. Doesn't call Tim Walz Joseph Stalin, because he says, stand up for your socialist beliefs, don't ever run from them. He says it's dangerous in terms of what it can do to a country's economy and its strength overseas. You don't hear that from him. It's hard for people to accept that Donald Trump has lines that he won't cross. Now, he might do it tomorrow. I may be on here because, who knows. But up to now, he has not done that. Here's what he's been accused of, outside of being Hitler, and just a few of the things. Collusion with the Russians. That was proven false twice. Never colluded with the Russians. No evidence of that at all. Never do that. He's a racist. He, under Trump's administration, historical black colleges had record funding that he gave them and unemployment at record lows for African Americans. That he was a dictator, that he was going to throw his opponents in jail. Phil, when did he throw, I missed this one, when did he throw Hillary Clinton in jail? Where did he lock her up?
Yeah, I'm waiting. I mean, I don't know.
Well, he's dictator, and they said lock her up, and do you recall that?
No,
he had 4 years to lock her up.
No,
In fact, he said that he wasn't going to lock her up because locking up or having someone, law enforcement, go after the wife of a former president would not be good for the country. That's his exact quote. Wants to take away your voting rights. What state did he take away the voting rights? All he did, in Georgia, he supported voter ID. And in the midterms, Georgia had the biggest turnout after all the reforms that he supported that was supposed to take away the votes, writing votes, of African Americans. You had the highest turnout of African Americans. And how insulting, especially, I can understand it, when you have black folk there, leaders in Georgia, saying that it's showing an ID is going to hurt voter turnout, as if black people can't present an ID, that they don't have an ID. That's insulting. He said, they say he hates women. He hates women. He made some crude remarks behind, closed doors, which are unsavory. Should not have been said at all, but hates women because he'll fight and argue with them, and I think gets down and argues too strong with them. Stuff that I would kind of give a little leeway to. But when you're running for president and you decide, I'm going to treat that individual as an equal, I'm not going to sit there and say, she, Hillary, or Kamala, is not a man, so I'm going to treat her differently. They tell you, no, treat us just the same. So when he does do that, he hates women. Now let's look at what he has lied about. Misinformation, if you will. This is what I can discern. Folks out there, if you have other things, send them to me. I'll read them, as long as we can verify them. I do believe he exaggerates his crowd sizes. Okay? Crowd size. Illegal migrants eating pets. He has no proof of that. That may have happened.
There's a bunch of proof for it.
We'll get into
It's a whole nother
that.
show. Yeah.
And I think he does exaggerate some of his accomplishments. Outside of that, I'm looking, but compare that with somebody who says the border is secure. All of those young ladies that were killed and murdered, it really didn't happen by illegal immigrants. And the one that was killed the young lady by an illegal immigrant with an ankle monitor that was caught and released because of the policies of this administration. That didn't really happen. That's not up there with lying about crowd size or exaggerated or eating pets. That's not the same category. Come on. Trump's Hitler, don't you remember? He's Mussolini. He's going to go from eating pets to putting you in a concentration camp. Can't you see the progression? Can't you see the slippery slope from exaggerating crowd sizes to starting and, being the dictator on day one to take away your voting rights? Don't you see that? To defund the police. All of the carnage, 35 people dead in those riots, and you had the administration bailing out the perpetrators of those riots. Is that the same as exaggerating your accomplishments? Exaggerating your accomplishments is much worse than that, right? That fentanyl coming across that border that took over 150,000 American lives last year, and on a record to break that this year. Oh, man, I mean, just, he may have ate a Westie, may have ate a golden retriever, accused the Haitians of doing that. First of all, he didn't say the Haitians, but anyway, here you know where I'm going with this thing. And it's very obvious. And here's my fear. I think this country has become so divided, so full of hate, so politically poisoned, that people literally are putting loyalty to their party over loyalty to their country. Because if you say your country is systemically racist and systemically bad, and the cause of world hunger and everything else bad in the country, give every other country a free pass, including China, Russia, everyone else. All of these problems are at the doorstep of the United States of America. And they've been taught that since kindergarten. And then it just gets worse in college when you have all these folks who are professors that literally hate America. Well, those strong ways. No, that was starting back when I was in college. Seriously. I was in classes with professors at University of Pacific that literally, even in my little mind back then, starting at 18 years old, was there for 4 or 5 years. I had a red shirt year. There were several classes, not the majority, but the start had begun. Well, these professors, you walk in, the first thing they do is tell you how horrible America is. And it picked up steam. A lot of those kids that went there believe that. I never took it in. I knew we had faults as a country, but I knew we weren't evil by nature. We had a lot of good things. That if you worked hard, played by the rules, you lived the American dream. Why? Because I was doing it. My dad made $1.65 an hour, topped out, working these fields. Mom cleaned houses, make ends meet. I won't get into a big, long story. But this whole white privilege thing, I didn't feel it. Because out in that field, you had white, black, Hispanic all driving those tractors, breathing that dust, dying of emphysema before they're 60. We didn't get a cab. My dad didn't get a cab on his tractor to protect from the dust. They all got the same. Bad working conditions. So I wish I could have got to this article on LA Times. I'm going to try to get to it by Thursday if I feel better after this little surgery on my elbow. But if not, I'm going to get to it because I think it's an example of what so many people have bought into that is absolutely false, destructive, and we need to get the truth out. The truth needs to matter. Again, whether you're talking about your worst enemy, if your worst enemy does something good and it's right, you got to find it in yourself to say, don't like the person, but that's a good thing. If your best friend does something horrible, hurts people, you got to be able to say, gosh, I like this person, love this person, but that's wrong. And if you yourself does something and you know it's wrong, from raising your voice when you shouldn't have to your spouse to whatever on a talk show, and you make a mistake like I've done many a times, You got to call it out. Take accountability for being wrong. Try to make it right by apologizing, and then move on down the road to the next thing. Believe me, that's the way to live, and that's the way to build a good, strong country, and the way to get God's blessing, in my opinion. Love y'all. God bless you. God bless America. Just do your best. Let God do the rest, and I promise you it's going to turn out the way it's supposed to. Love y'all so much. Bye-bye now.